Good morning. You have your test tomorrow on adding and subtracting fractions. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of the types of problems that you might see on the test, okay? So first of all, which group of fractions shares a common denominator? Well, the denominator, remember, is the bottom number, right? So the 5 and the 7 are denominators, the 8 and the 5 are denominators, and then here's the 9 and the 9 are denominators. And a common denominator is just a denominator that the two numbers share in common. So, which group of fractions shares a common denominator? 5 and 7, those aren't common. 8 and 5, not common. 9 and 9. These two share a common denominator. Now remember, when we add or subtract fractions, we need that common denominator, right? You cannot add or subtract fractions unless they have a common denominator. So how do you find that common denominator? Okay, so step one is to find the LCM. Remember, that means the least common multiple of both denominators. Right? So the first thing we need to do is list out those multiples. What are the multiples of 7? I'll do it over here in red. What are the multiples of 7? We got 7, 14, 21, 28. Remember, so when we're talking about multiples, we're skip counting. Right? When we're looking for that common denominator, we skip count. What are the multiples of 3? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, and I could keep going, right? But what is the common, do we have a common multiple here? I believe we do. I believe it's 21, right? So 21 is the common multiple, okay? So that means that the denominator for both these is going to be 21, okay? Now, we're going to change both these fractions using the LCM, or the least common multiple we found above, to find the least common denominator. But remember, we also have to find our numerators. How do we find our numerators? Well, how do we get from 3 to 21? 3 times 7 is 21. Whatever you do to the bottom, you got to do the top. 2 times 7 is 14. How did we get from 7 to 21? Well, 7 times 3 is 21. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? Now we can add our two fractions. 9 over 21 plus 14 over 21. Remember, we just add the numerators, not the denominators. 14 plus 9 is 23. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Yep, I'm right. 23 over 21, right? The numerator changes, the denominator stays the same, right? So we found our least common multiple by skip counting, circling our common multiple, and whatever we did to the bottom, we got to do the top. What's the rule for making equivalent fractions? So which of the following are equivalent? Well, basically we want to see, did we do the same thing to the bottom we did to the top, right? If we did the same thing to get from 4 to 12 as we did to get to from 3 to 9, then it's equivalent, right? So how do we get from 4 to 12? 4 times 3 is 12. Is 3 times 3 9? Yeah, 3 times 3 is 9. So this one's equivalent. Let's look again. How do we get from 5 to 10? Well, 5 times 2 is 10. Is 1 times 2 1? Nope. So we need, this would have been equivalent if this was a 2, right? But it's not. So this one's not equivalent. How about this one? How do we go from 8 to 8? Well, we didn't do anything, right? Really, we just multiplied by 1. 8 times 1 is 8. So same thing to the top. 4 times 1 is 4, but this says 2. So this is also not equivalent, right? It's equivalent if we did the same thing to the bottom as we do the top. Oh, this one looks like we're decreasing, so we're dividing, right? How do we get from 20 to 10? Well, we divided by 2, right? 20 divided by 2 is 10. Is 10 divided by 2 5? Oops. 10 divided by 2. Is 10 divided by 2 5? It sure is. So this one is also equivalent, right? As long as we did the same thing to the bottom as we did to the top, it's equivalent, and that means we might multiply the bottom and the top by the same thing, or we might divide the bottom and the top by the same thing. Last one. Now, remember, when we find our answer, we always need to put it in simplest form. Okay, and this is where we get confused because a lot of people are confusing simplest form with equivalent fractions. How do we put an answer into simplest form? Well, step one is we're going to find the GCF. Remember, this is the greatest common factor. So how do we make 6 and 24? Okay, we make a fraction into simplest form when you divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number until they're as small as they go. Okay, so in this case, we're just looking at the numerator 6 and the denominator 24. So what are the factors of 6? How can we get 6? Well, hold on, I'm going to color here. Well, let's see. 1 times 6 is 6. Any other way to get 6? Yep. 3 times 2 is 6, right? I almost did 3. So that means the factors of 6 are 1, 3, 6, and 2. How do we get 24? What are all the different ways to get 24? Well, 1 times 24 is 24. How else can we get 24? 2 times anything? 2 times 12 is 24. How about 3? 8, right? 3 times 8 is 24. Anything else? 4? 4 times 4? No, 4 times 6, right? 4 times 6 is 24. So the factors of 24 are 1, 24, 2, 12, 8, 3, 4, and 6. Okay, so those are all the factors of 24. So now we need to find the greatest common factor. That's what we're going to divide by. So let's see, what number is the biggest? Well, I see a 6 here, and I see a 6 here. That's the greatest common factor, the GCF. So that means we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 24 divided by 6 is 4. So 6/24 can be simplified to 1/4. Okay?